Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You have reached episode number 296, entitled Gutenberg, FSE, block themes, variants, blocks, rich Tabor on the whole lot. It was published on Thursday the 22nd of September 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and just before we get to Rich and the interview with him, a few bits of housekeeping. If you like what we do at WP Builds, we would really appreciate it if you want to share your love of the content that we create. Head over to wpbuilds.com/subscribe. You can subscribe to the newsletter over there, but feel free to just use your own initiative. Share it on your favourite social platform. Our Twitter handle is @WP Builds. But also, if you fancy going into your podcast player of choice, for example, something like Apple Podcasts, and giving us a review, we'd be most appreciative. Another page that I always mention at this point is our deals page, wpbuilds.com/deals. It is a bit like Black Friday, but every single day of the week. Searchable, filterable WordPress deals, coupon codes, significant amounts off WordPress products, so check that out. And also, I keep plugging our social install of Mastodon. It's at the URL WP Builds Social. It's a fairly quiet environment at the moment, but you never know. If I keep plugging away at it, it may end up being something like a Twitter variant. It's a web app called Mastodon. It's free and open source, a bit like WordPress is, and I've installed it over there if you fancy quietening down your social life. So that's wpbuilds.social, and yes, that is a URL. This is the first episode of the podcast that I recorded since returning from my trip to San Diego for WordCamp US, and I would just like to say thank you very much to anybody and everybody who spent time with me. It was an absolute pleasure. What a glorious experience it was. And so, yeah, just a big thank you for anybody that was able to hang out with me, and I apologise if I didn't get to meet all of you. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with The Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more benefits and to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by heading over to the URL go.me/WP Builds. That's go.me/WP Builds. And we do sincerely thank GoDaddy Pro for helping to keep the WP Builds podcast going. Okay, what have we got on the show today? Well, we've got a really nice one for you. We've got Rich Tabor. Now, if you've not heard of Rich Tabor before, this probably is going to be a wonderful episode because you're going to be introduced to not only a very intelligent person talking about all the new things in WordPress, but also you're going to enjoy listening to his voice because it's truly soothing and wonderful. So that's what we talk about. We talk about Gutenberg, FSE, block themes, blocks, and a whole lot more. Rich is a real expert. He's had his own theme business for many, many years. He's currently working with Extendify, and he's really bullish about all of the new bits and pieces that are being added into WordPress. Really, it's all about the future and what is coming down the pipe, what you might be able to make use of, how you might be able to make use of it. So if you're fully into all of that, or even if you're a bit skeptical and you need a reason to start investigating, this is going to be a great episode for you. I hope that you enjoy it. I am joined on the podcast today by Rich Tabor. Hello, Rich.
Hey, Nathan. Glad to be here again.
Yeah, thank you for joining us once more. You've been on the This Week in WordPress show, and we've also interviewed you on the WP Tavern, but always nice to hear what is the smoothest, silkiest voice, I think, in WordPress. Bravo for having such a nice voice.
Well, I appreciate that.
We don't really know where this conversation is going to go. We've got a whole bunch of disparate show notes, and we're just going to meander our way through it without any particular direction. So bear with us. We may be incisive. We may wander a little bit, but that's going to be part of today's experience. First of all, for anybody who doesn't know you, Rich, do you want to just give us the potted history of who you are and how you've come to be on a WordPress podcast? What's your history with WordPress and so on?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Rich Tabor, and I publish on richtabor.com. I wrote pretty much, you can follow along all my blog posts from probably 2011 or so when I first started really diving into WordPress. I jumped in first as a designer, doing marketing emails and marketing landing pages for a local firm where I went to school, and quickly moved into building and designing themes, and decided I really wanted to understand the underpinnings of WordPress. So I started diving into engineering, and that quickly fired off into the world of blocks and Gutenberg when that started becoming a thing. And I remember sitting down after WordCamp US when Matt Mullenweg first mentioned, to learn JavaScript deeply. I remember going home and just really trying to build blocks and failing miserably. I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. I barely knew any JavaScript, but I took that to heart and really wanted to lean in, and that's what I did for the next couple of years, and made co-blocks. My theme shop did pretty well, Theme Beans, and ended up selling those to GoDaddy and working over there on the WordPress experience team, doing a lot of really innovative bits on the forefront of WordPress experience, and really helping kick off GoDaddy into that new era of WordPress. And now I'm at Extendify doing a similar idea of taking what we're, the stage that we're at in WordPress that's all brand new and all fresh, and trying to package that up into a solution that is accessible to everyone in a very innovative fashion.
So Extendify, you can Google basically, Extindify, Extendify. Is it .com?
It is.
Yeah, Extendify.com, and you can see what Rich, amongst other people, are doing over there. But basically, it's like a library, a suite of patterns which rely on core blocks for 99.99 recurring percent of their functionality, and it's very, very cool, and it's well worth checking out. Are you in an excited period? There's a lot of people who seem to be quite turned off by Gutenberg. You've obviously decided a long time ago that this was going to be something you were to anchor your relationship to WordPress on. You were going to dive deep and so on. Is this an exciting time? Did you find that it was a headache to get to the point where you are now? Was it a slog? And are you excited by what you see, I don't know, over the horizon the next 2-3 years?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I feel very, I don't know, I feel very, like I'm in a very great time period of WordPress, and I feel like I'm in the right spot at the right time to really jump in on all this new stuff and help push it forward. And I think this is a very opportune time to be both a very advanced developer and a very skilled designer, and also very novice designer and developer. The tools a couple years ago when I first dove into Gutenberg and React were very different than they were today. Today, you can build a block in an hour. Like, you can really leverage all of the new systems that have been put in place, and then all the great documentation now to use what's called block.json, for example, to turn on and off features that each of us individually had to write and spend hours on writing even 2 years ago. So I think the improvements on that front have made it even more exciting because of the speed that you can really operate in. And then experience-wise, like, I really see this as an opportunity to consolidate the WordPress experience to where it looks and feels the same regardless of how you use WordPress.
Yeah.
So if you think of the block experience, and then now we're leaning into the theming experience and how themes can be evolved and switch on different sites and still run and look beautiful, instead of having this time period of this pain period really of resetting your site with themes. And I think that we're halfway through this like big shift in WordPress to move in this direction, and this is the time to be here, and I'm really stoked about it.
The excitement is obviously fairly palpable in your case, but there must be, you're kind of wearing two hats here, aren't you? Because in the past, when the whole enterprise of creating a theme was a difficult thing, there was obviously a career in that. You could trade your theme for dollars because it was difficult. I just wonder if you have any thoughts on whether or not that career is going to be the same in the future? In other words, are you still going to be able, I say you, I mean people who are themers, are they still going to be able to have a viable business given that the barrier to entry is going to be so much lower?
This is probably the number one question I get asked. I mean, pretty much weekly by folks, either on Twitter or an email. But I think that the theme market has been changing quite significantly over maybe the past 10 years or so. Like ever since multi-purpose themes and then page builders started really becoming prolific. The theme market in itself has changed dynamically to fit into those models. So instead of buying a standard theme that does not support Elementor, you're much more likely to see a theme that better supports Elementor building or other competing builders. I see this wave of innovation kind of sitting into that same boat. So now the block themes that are going to come out are more tailored to supporting Gutenberg than anything else, and maybe only Gutenberg. Of course, Elementor has its own design system that can lay on top of most themes, but these are becoming more tailored for WordPress in general. And I think that that's a good thing. But the downside is that, like you said, it's harder to sell something that's simple or easier to make. And but when I look at themes, and I don't see them quite the same way. Like I don't see them as like this is one way that your site could look. I see it as like, what is the goal? Like what is the experience that I want to provide with this theme? Like the theme is not the end all. It's getting the actual website up and above the expectations of the user that's implementing that theme. And that's the area, if I was a theme developer right now really pushing into the market, I would turn in that direction. I wouldn't stay making generic themes. I would really try to go for experience.
I'm guessing that at some point in the future, new pathways will open to making a career in this direction. We just don't know what they are at the moment because the maturation hasn't really taken hold. Things are still in a sort of state of flux, and some people are in, some people are not in. And as things mature and stabilize, maybe it'll become, with a bit of hindsight, it'll be, oh, okay, that's kind of where that career ended up, but we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and
go on.
I was going to say, and also I think on Twitter there was a conversation the other day about like we're really looking for that big inspiration, like who's going to come out with something that really like sets like the new trajectory of how themes are sold or how theme marketplaces work, or even full site editing. Like we're kind of at that point where I feel like it's about to happen. And when that happens, we'll start seeing more folks diving in on the product side, because right now there's just so much unknown out there.
Yeah, I suppose in a sense it's a bit like when true WYSIWYG page builders came around. As soon as the shoe dropped over there, all the other people who had aspirations to build their own product in the WordPress space were, oh, okay, this is the way we can do it. We can leverage something which looks akin to that. We've got our own way of doing it, but we can leverage that, and we just need somebody to figure out what that is, which is really interesting. But it's palpable that this is going to happen soon. We just can't quite grasp it just yet.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks that are experimenting and trying to figure out what works and keep up with the pace of development within WordPress. And even over the last year, the advances 6.0 and the upcoming 6.1 release are going to push out are really letting folks leverage the themes and the blocks in a whole different light. And I'm really looking forward to those. Yeah.
What do you say to people who push back against Gutenberg and they just see it as a thing that's been foisted upon them? They see a UI which in some cases looks like this one day and then a few weeks later looks entirely different. It's being built. Some people, I guess, would level the argument that basically it's a beta, as we say here, beta, I guess you say, product which is evolving in core, and therefore find it a little bit difficult to take. They want it to be stable. They want it to be able to explain everything to their clients so that they don't have to keep going back to them. Are you kind of sanguine about this? Do you feel that this was done in the right way, that the iterative approach in core, pushing everything to live, was the right way to do it? Or do you wish that maybe it had matured to a certain point, maybe to where we're at now, for example, before it got dropped?
Yeah, that's a tough question, but I don't think we would have iterated to where we're at now without getting it out there.
Yeah.
I think that I'm much more I'm very iterative, like in how I work. I really strive for the MVP, then rolling out like real products, and then finding out like what's happening, like how are people responding to this, what are they hitting, like what hurdles are stopping them, what's empowering them, and getting feedback. And we're kind of doing that at a huge macro level within WordPress. And I think there were some decisions that maybe could have had more time or needed more time, but at the end of the day, I think, like I said, if we wouldn't have rolled it out and actually run with this thing, I don't think we'd be where we're at today.
So if you were to thinking about the landscape as you know it as of today, so we're recording this in August 2022, what are the things that are going on? You can name names, product names, people names, and so on, things that are exciting you that you've seen, things that have made you sit up and think, that's interesting, that's quirky, didn't see that coming, that's novel, I like that.
Yeah, so let's see, Anna Sagoda and Ellen Bauer, those two are leading the theme front commercially. I think that they're coming up with interesting ideas and really trying to two different approaches to theming. One, Ellen's taken Ino blocks, like her block theme, blocks and block themes collection, and steering them into its own framework. Anna's kind of going the opposite way of trying to keeping a little bit closer to WordPress core. And I'm curious, how those are going to come out and how those are going to move forward. And Anna just released a WooCommerce specific block theme, which is also very interesting. I think, again, leaning into the experience that you're providing, not just the CSS, from the Theme.json file. So those two are really doing well. I love all the work that Brian Gardner is doing and Nick Diego, all the communication around what's possible in WordPress with this new era of WordPress, and really they're leaning in on it. I know GoDaddy's been doing a lot of work, more behind the scenes, but they've been doing a lot of work on improving the first touch experience within WordPress and how you start off with the site. Extendify, we're leaning in on the same area. We're building, it's kind of internal-ish right now, but we're building basically a way to get sites delivered to you that are kind of configured for you on the fly based on block themes. So like a block theme.json file is delivered to your site, and it really lets you style your site how you have indicated you wanted it done. So if you say that you're a musician, we can show you styles that are derived for musicians, and you really get something started. And using our layouts library, we're able to plug those onto pages for you and create them on the fly. So we're leaning in on building whole experiences that really leverage everything that's out there instead of just looking at the individual blocks or the individual themes.
Can we dive into that? Because that seems really interesting to me. So this is on the Extendify side of things. And you couple that with, you were talking about GoDaddy and the way that they were trying to onboard people into WordPress with their version of things. And then you started mentioning the way that you're doing that in Extendify. Can you just elaborate that a little bit? In other words, can you describe what that may look like? So if I log into, is this for people just using WordPress perhaps for the first time? And I don't mean that they are using it for the first time, but they've got a vanilla install and they put Extendify on, and then you kind of chaperone them through with a bunch of options and choices which lead them to some basic starting point.
Yeah, at Extendify, our avenue, it's a bit different from what GoDaddy's doing, but the idea at the end of the day is to deliver a site that's built for you. And GoDaddy and most others have like even Squarespace has the method where you can pick one of 100 different themes, and that is your site. What we're doing is a little bit different, where if you indicate that you are a musician, and then you indicate what your goals are, like if you're trying to run an event or sell tickets to a show, then we'll generate, the goal is to generate templates and layout designs within a style that might be appropriate for musicians for you. And then you pick the best one that you like, and we set up WordPress with those pages that you've indicated you needed with the style.
What decision tree did you go down to decide what it is that, so for example, you mentioned that you're a musician or something. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's a whole tree of careers that you could be there, a mechanic or a musician or got a restaurant or something like that. How have you come to decide where to marshal your energies for that? Have you done a lot of kind of customer research, or is it just based upon what you think people may wish to have?
It's definitely based on research and a lot of testing. And in this different industries that we're supporting, we're going with, we're starting wide. Like I think we have 60 or so different industries that we support right now.
Wow.
But it's still wide, but
that's a lot.
It is, yeah, it's a lot. But when you look at Wix like has like presets for like thousands.
Yeah.
So like,
but they've got millions and millions of dollars to.
They do.
Whereas it's just there's a handful of you, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and really we're leveraging. You mentioned earlier, like we have a library of content, basically patterns that are built of core blocks. That's what we're leveraging. We built that for this vision, and this is what we see is like the next iteration of experience. Like the page library collection is very much like you have a site and you want to add a new page, or you have a site and you want to augment your existing pages. This is to get you to that point where you have a site. So we're kind of going up the tree a little bit. But it's something, it's super fresh. We're still experimenting a lot, and it's not very public yet, but I'm allowed to talk about it, so it's cool.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. You remember in the day when everybody was looking on Theme Forest and they would find a theme and it promised to do all of this stuff, and you would download it and get it going, and then you'd immediately figure out this is a disaster. None of this is going to work for what I need. You know where I'm going with this. I'm just wondering if you need to be mindful of that. You sort of promise that, okay, you're a mechanic, we can sort you out with a website. The impediment isn't the creation of the website. The impediment is after they've clicked the generate website button, and then the ability to learn the UI and figure out the quirks of Gutenberg and blocks and how they all function. So fantastic that you've got that, but I'm just wondering how much thought needs to be put in on the other side when they've finally got the site and then need to modify it to their own needs. Because I think the UI of Gutenberg is somewhat counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's not the best interface. I think that there's tons of work that can be done on it. But on that front, we're also working on another little drop here.
Nice.
on another sister product that is really like unofficially we're calling it Assist. Like, and the goal is to assist you with getting kicked off on your site. So now we've got your site spun up for you in the industry that you prefer, with the styles and the images, and now, like, how do you edit your first page, or how do you augment different images and whatnot? So trying to figure out a way to help walk through. It's very exploratory right now, but that's something that we also see that pain point and want to help.
It's curious because you seem to have hit on the idea of the first 2 days of the WordPress website journey is the bit where you're pitching your energies. It's like trying to get people to be able to go from no website, vanilla WordPress install, just get them over those first few hurdles. And I'm really curious that that's what you're doing, because it seems very intentional that you're planting your flag at the beginning of the journey of the website. And obviously there'll be ongoing stuff, but have I got that right? Is that kind of where you see the promise? It's setting all this stuff up and making it work and getting the first few days under your belt.
Yeah, that's the ultimate WordPress problem.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants to solve this. Elementor wants to solve this. Everyone wants to get to that point where you're confident in your website as soon as possible. Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And how do you make it to where anybody can do that, and not just get to that point where you're like, I feel like I have to hire someone to finish this and it's a wreck, or you just never do anything with it because you hit too many hurdles. And getting over that hump, is really what we're looking at, and where we see some massive opportunity. And with, the full site editing effort and block themes and blocks in general, like, we really see a configuration system where we can put all these configurations on your site in a way that is true to core, but also custom and personalized in a sense to you. Like, and it's like this system is enabling us to do this. And without Gutenberg or block themes or full site editing, we would have to rely on external sources. And then, then we introduce a whole nother wave of complications trying to map stuff together.
I'm just about to open up a complete, I'm going to go down a road which neither of us are expecting. Let's see where this goes. The stuff that you've described, if we were talking about creating text on a website, up until very recently, that text has been generated only by humans. And, if you didn't employ a copywriter or did it yourself, it basically was a blank page. You had to do it. But now we're in this curious period. It seems like the robots are taking over, and the AI is becoming a core part of creating content for many people, even if it's just to kickstart an idea and give them some framework to work on, and they can edit it and modify it themselves. Have you got any interest in that area in terms of website building? Like I say, a bit left field, but the idea that you would get AI to take you on that journey. So, you are a mechanic, you want to sell particular products, you live in this particular area, you go through your onboarding process, but there's kind of like an AI component to that. I don't know if that's anything you're curious about at all.
I'm definitely curious. I don't know 100%, if I'm confident in that direction, but I feel like that's one of those technologies that everyone's kind of unsure about, and then one day it's very sure. And hopefully Gutenberg's the same way. Like that's what I see. But I think it's very interesting. I don't know, the personalized part of it. Like maybe there's a point where the AI is personal enough and it can scrape your other social media platforms enough to where it can write your descriptions or your about page, for you. Like, I don't know, like if it was like a more personal type portfolio or something, then maybe it like finds out where you went to school and it writes like I graduated in 2011, and it can do that for you maybe at one point. But I do think there's still that want to like express yourself in a way, and on those kind of interactions and pages, maybe it's necessary to have something to start with, like what we're doing with Extendify, but still making it easy to tailor that. So it's kind of a better starting point maybe.
Yeah.
But who knows, maybe one day you click a button and your site's done for you and you love it. I don't know.
Well, have you come across DALL-E, DALLE, which I remember having the conversation about, well, I don't think anybody was calling it artificial intelligence, but back in the day when I was, 20 years ago or something like that, when having conversations about the capabilities of what computers could do, I was absolutely sure, like completely certain, that art was out of bounds for computers. They couldn't do it. They never would do it because it was a human enterprise and it required consciousness or something, some spark that we've all got that computers don't have. Fast forward to 2022. Well, that's all in the bin. You give something like DALL-E a set of instructions. I'd like to see a cat on a pillow with a guitar or something, and out come 50 variations of that exact image, and they're all completely different. The principle being that it throws 50 things out at you in the hope that one of them resonates. And I think that's where my conversation was going. Not so much about the text, but more about the idea that a collection of blocks could be thrown together by an artificial intelligence, which could then put together 30 options for your website, which then you could browse and say, you know what, that's closest to what I want. It's not perfect, but that's the closest one. Let's go with that as our starting point.
I would say that what we're doing at Extendify, it's not AI driven, but it is smart systems and categorizing behind the scenes that in the way that we're doing this. We're not building, everything. That would just be too much to maintain, but we're doing it on the fly, and or essentially on the fly. And that idea, like you just mentioned, of having a couple different variants to start with and to roll with, and have a site like kicked up for you, like that is what we want to achieve. Like that is like having like the best, how do I get you with the best foot forward to be successful with your website? And that's really what we're pushing on.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Like I said, it's completely taken me by surprise, the capability of these kind of things. But also, equally, I suppose people like you who have a rich history of being able to create beautiful designs, you, in a sense, become like the boutique, the person who can charge potentially extra because you are not the AI. In the same way that I can go to IKEA and order a cupboard, and it'll cost me a couple of $100 and it'll be just the same as everybody else's cupboard. But if I go to a carpenter, they're probably going to charge me several thousand, but I'll know I've got the one and only done by a true expert. And I wonder if maybe that's an interesting niche.
Yeah, I think we'll see folks going more up market. I think that's probably, maybe it's better that than staying low. The way that Gutenberg's evolving, for sure.
Yeah, you've got a couple of projects. Let's pivot a little bit. You've been creating, well, two that I've caught sight of. Perhaps you can tell me there's more, I don't know. But they've both got fascinating sounding names. They sound a little bit like they might be Japanese or something like that. One of them is called Wabi, W-A-B-I, and one of them is called Way. I think I've pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Do you want to just tell us what these are, what the intention was, why you've put them out there?
Yeah, so they're both block themes. They're relatively simple, Wabi and Way. Wabi I'm actually running on my own blog, richtabor.com. So it is the demo of the block theme. And I created Wabi. That's the first one I did. I created that originally and just like with previous themes I've made in the past that I've run on my blog, is to kind of experiment and run all the latest stuff on my live website and have the latest type of theme, all the latest controls, and to really use this new stuff and find out like where there are pitfalls, where can we have improvements, and what are the things that I need to, or I feel like I need to share with others to help push this forward. So Wabi was, I think it might have even been the first theme in the themes directory that has style variants.
Oh, congratulations!
So I pushed that out. Thanks. It was fun, like the idea, like that's such a new and fresh
so
concept.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's like it could be as many themes as you want in one theme in a sense. Like there's a point where it doesn't matter anymore. Like if you're using one theme with 100 variants or 100 themes, if they're all block themes, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, there's a nice bit about, I don't know, halfway down the page where you talk about the style variations, and you've probably got about 20 or so just listed there, and you basically just click a button and everything immediately looks completely different. And my understanding is that you can go real soup to nuts with that as well. It's not just about changing background colors. You can change all sorts of things. You can really make it look different, and all you are doing in effect is, as a user, is clicking a button. It's remarkable.
Yeah, that's right. And the reason, Wabi and Way both, their styles both look, they carry the same feeling, design wise, that the parent style does, and that was intentional because both of them have. I added a little extra where you could swap the theme of a page, for instance, like you can have a yellow page or a blue page, like within the color styles. But the new 2023 effort that started a couple weeks ago is designed to be quite the opposite. So having an array of styles that are very different.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see like how far we can push that. I've got one that I've been working on this morning that I'm going to submit and to see how we can push this thing and really flex what WordPress is capable of doing with, just 2023 will be like a very simple block theme, but with, I don't know how many styles, but like that idea just seems really interesting to me.
I saw the video. It was only about 15 seconds long, where they were going through a range of different style variations, and the theme itself was super minimal, almost like a wireframe.
Yeah.
There was no images. There wasn't even an image placeholder. It was basically a rectangle with a line stroked through it, just to give you the impression that was where an image would go. And everything was changing. The background color was changing. There was fluid typography. The margin and the padding was all shifting, and it was done in such a way that it looked elegant. It wasn't just you click a button and the page refreshes. It all sort of glided from one to the other, and you could see the transformation in front of your eyes. And I did think it was incredibly impressive, and I do love the idea. I think it was yours, of just this one theme, the theme. The idea of just having a base theme where blocks go and you can use full site editing for it. And that felt, the 2023 theme, as will be maybe, who knows what it'll end up looking like, that felt like it was offering that a little bit. There was a bit of promise there.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be very exploratory, and we have some of the more prolific theme authors diving in on it. So it's very interesting to see everyone kind of coming together in a different way, in a sense, because the design hasn't been created, and each of us are kind of contributing to that. And we're hitting a few roadblocks, and we're pushing ideas back to core, and we're doing all the things, but on a bigger scale than most themes. I do think that I don't know that 2023 will become the default WordPress theme like forever. I don't think we're quite there. That was one of my ideas a few years ago, but I don't see why we couldn't have a system where, say, you activate WordPress and you pick a theme, but all those themes are just a JSON file.
Yeah,
in a sense, like it doesn't matter what the default theme is per se. It could be pick one of these variants of 2023 could be the first touch experience of a WordPress site. We need something else, I think, than what we have today on that front. And and what we're doing, Extendify is very tailored and very specific. But for WordPress, I think something more general where you do have some sort of style selector right off, like that could be very interesting and help you feel like you have a personalized website, like right off.
Yeah, I kind of feel that there's something quite satisfying about going through that style selection right at the outset and kind of feeling like you've got ownership of things. And the reason that's orange is because I decided it was going to be orange. It didn't just come for the ride. I had to go through that whole process. You mentioned Theme.json. My guess is that 60-70% of the people listening to this podcast will be fairly familiar with what that is, even if they've never touched it. But for the 30-40% who don't, do you just want to outline what it does and why it's important in the future?
Sure, yeah. Theme.json is the core component of a block theme, and it's essentially a configuration file for the theme styles and all the block settings. So it was added, I think, in 5.8. So it's been there for a little while now. Yep. But in classic themes, that's what we're calling themes that support the older versions of WordPress a little bit better than block themes. Like those can still leverage a theme.json file, but in a little bit different ways. But for block themes and 5.8 moving forward, or really 6.0 when block themes became a real thing with 2022 coming out, you can enable and disable different features like drop cap, padding support, or even cut down custom colors so that you can't apply a custom color throughout your site. Change the gradients, duotones, font sizes. It's really a configuration level for the entire site design. And,
it's very, very cool. I feel that the more people that get on that bandwagon, the more the promise of the whole block theme and full site editing, it starts to make much more sense. If you're just looking at it from the outside and you just think, well, I've got my page builder of choice, I'm happy. As soon as you start to explore this kind of stuff, the sky clears a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and there's advantages for the beginners who would never even look at the JSON file, because you can take the global styles interface within full site editing and manipulate essentially that file from that interface. And it's one system that is read by WordPress, by the theme gets absorbed into WordPress, and then the user's settings get applied on top of that. So it's a way that if you don't know anything about code, like you can really still tailor your website in WordPress core. And then it's also very advantageous for the builders or the agencies as well, because you really do have a lot more flexibility today, even than you did a year ago, on how tight the website is controlled, like design-wise. And you can tailor every little thing if you want, or keep it very free-flowing. Like some of the themes like Wabi and Way are very free-flow. Like you can kind of do what you want with it, because I don't want to tighten those up. But for an agency, being able to have one system, one JSON file that lets you manipulate how structured your site is like very interesting and appealing.
I'm staring at the Way site at the moment, and I've got to the full site editing paragraph. I'll link to the particular blog post that I'm talking about. Full site editing seems to be very much in flux. I mean, obviously the promise is excellent. How do you feel the implementation is so far? Do you think it's good enough for prime time? In other words, if you were an agency building for clients, are you going to be doing it would you be doing it this way, or do you think there's still a way to go before it settles down and you can finally really, really start using block themes and get rid of classic themes altogether? Because my experience with full site editing was clumsy, to say the least. I found it, this is going back probably a month or so ago. I found it really difficult to get my head around it, and I was trying to be as pathetic as possible, if you know what I mean. I was trying to imagine that I didn't know anything and I was coming to it with fresh eyes. And how does this even work? What? I click that and then all of these, suddenly there's 1,000 child elements and I don't understand what any of this is about. It feels to me like this is somewhere where there's a lot of room for improvement, but I don't know what you think.
I think that full site editing for simpler sites is probably fine. Like on my blog, for example, running on that. I think when you get into more complex requirements, like if you needed a mega menus or a different sort of mobile menu experience, like right now they're very tightly controlled within WordPress, and it's not as tailored, like the small experiences like that. Overall, I think that the effort of full site editing has really been focused on the technology, like how do we make this system work, and less on the experience. And you can, like you said, Nathan, you can really feel that it's a little bit clunky and clumsy in areas. And there's been a ton of work on that front, but there's still quite a bit ways to go, and before it feels delightful and simple in a sense. But I think for simple sites, though, I think you can run it fine.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. If you've just got in my case, the piece of the puzzle which was difficult, I think, was menus and things like that. And I found that interface quite confusing because everything now is a block, and it just, I don't know, there was just some sort of disconnect. I'm just not used to it, and I'm wedded to the old system, which I actually really liked. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how that goes down. Now, you alluded to the fact that you've got a few projects going on. I don't know how secretive those are, but we'll be putting them out in the podcast anyway. So, any other things which are going to be happening for Rich and for Extendify, and any other projects that you might be working on for the remainder of 2022? In other words, what's on Rich's roadmap?
My roadmap. Well, at Extendify, we're exploring all this new stuff, and we're experimenting actively with it. So continuing to drive home on that front, and this idea of onboarding a custom site for very specific niches like that. That's very true to what I think our goal is for this year, and we're doing excellent on that front. So just kind of putting more out there on that front. We're going to update our website and really start talking about it pretty soon here. Personally, I'm the design lead for WordPress 6.1, so I'm really starting to turn my attention onto that, and really driving a lot of Gutenberg and full site editing experiences that I think that really need to be a little bit more tailored to better support, like what we talked about with making WordPress more delightful and simple. And so I've got some ideas on that front to push on. I might do another block theme. I have a few ideas locally that I've just been exploring with, and really the idea with each of these is to put out something that others can experiment with and kind of see, and we can discuss and feel out how to push block themes in a certain direction. So I've got some ideas on that front I might do as well.
Yeah, it's a busy roadmap, Rich.
I was going to say,
it's not without writing, line items, is it? Yeah, it's a full Trello board. And you were about to say something else. Go on, I interrupted. I'm sorry.
I want to write more. So I've been coming up, like on Twitter, I've been sharing a lot more on Twitter, and really just trying to I don't know if a positive voice is the right word, but just kind of push out like the stuff that is really exciting and interesting, and kind of inspire others to take another look. Because I know Gutenberg a few years ago was quite a bit rough, and the transition from Classic to Gutenberg was rough as well. But things are totally different now, and it really is. It's inspired me to pull up my jeans and really run a little bit harder on this. So, I
have to say, if your intention is to be what's the right word I want to use here? If your intention is to be a good member of the community and giving back and giving out positive messages, all I can say is you are fully succeeding. You're talked about a lot, and there's nowhere where you're not talked about in positive ways. I think everybody that comes into contact with you and the work that you've done is incredibly impressed. And personally, the 6.1 design lead thing, yeah, I mean, just hats off for that. That's an incredible undertaking. Do you know roughly what kind of commitment is going to be involved in that, in terms of, well, maybe time is the metric that we'd be talking about? Do you know how much time you're going to need to put into that?
It's my first time leading or being the design lead for WordPress release. So, I asked a couple mentors and whatnot, and other folks who've done it before, and they've told me roughly around 5 hours a week is what I would get. But it's kind of one of those roles, I think, that you kind of get out of it what you put in. And I've talked with Extendify, and we're good with rolling forward, because the better we make WordPress, the better it is for everyone, including for what we're doing at Extendify. And we think it's a very valuable place to put time and energy, and I do personally as well. So I'm excited about that front, big time.
Last question, if that's all right, and it's related directly to Extendify. We've seen in the WordPress space, the plugin market has blossomed, and many people have made amazing careers. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people who come along and their projects, they last a little while and then they struggle financially and they disappear and so on. So just wondering, for those people who, on the back of this podcast, do end up browsing the extendify.com website, is that project on a solid footing? Have you managed to find a user and customer base that means that you're confident that that project will be going for the days, weeks, months, years to come?
Oh, 100%. Nice. The library is really doing well, and folks are really using it quite significantly, and it's grown. I don't know how many percent since I've joined, even just in September, but it's grown quite significantly, and that's the reason we're really leaning even further into this direction with this idea of launching your site with our tools, with the library and whatnot. So I've seen online a couple of times recently, even like the idea of using existing products to build new products with, and kind of like the idea of sister relationships between the two. And really, that's something that we're leveraging 100%. And I totally am on board with that train, because you have the customer, you understand the need, and you know that there's a need right next to it, or even further up the chain. And that's exactly what we're doing, and going to keep riding that wave.
I've got to say bravo, because, maybe this idea came across your desk and you could have dismissed it. Life could have been completely different, or it could have just not taken hold, or the team just didn't get along. And to hear that there's now genuine industry, you've got a business and a career based upon stuff inside of the block editor. I just think that's great, and kind of like a shining light for anybody else who's thinking about making that transition and moving over to blocks and block themes and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, just bravo, well done. I think well deserved, and I hope the success continues.
Thanks, Nathan. Well, it is the present and future of WordPress, so
yeah,
I would encourage folks to take a look. Yeah,
get on board. Yeah, Rich Tabor, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that. An absolute pleasure chatting to Rich. Like I said at the top of the show, he's a very, very intelligent person and has got all of the chops when it comes to the new things in WordPress. You've obviously been able to hear in the podcast episode all of the different projects that he's involved in, both with Extendify, the company that he works for, but also the projects that he's taken on and developing independently in order to push things like full site editing and block themes and all of that goodness into the future. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with The Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by going to go.me/WP Builds. And we thank GoDaddy Pro for their continued support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, as it was an interview episode this week, we shall have a chat with myself and David Wormsley next week. I hope that you are able to attend. We produce that podcast episode. It comes out every Thursday. Subscribe on your favourite podcast player and you'll get them automatically. But we'll also be back on Monday for our This Week in WordPress show. I'm joined live at wpbuilds.com/live, usually by 3 other WordPressers. And if you want to join in the comments, we'd appreciate that very, very much indeed. So hopefully we'll see you at some point this week. If not, we'll catch you next week. All that remains for me to do is to say, have a good week, stay safe. Here comes some cheesy music, and boy is this one cheesy. Bye-bye for now.